Hello, everyone. I'm going to talk to you about how to conduct content analysis. In my other videos, I've been talking about thematic analysis, which is the process of going through your data, identify information that is significant, and then develop goals and themes to help you to address your research question. The content analysis is a little bit different. This process is more of you first create your goals and themes before you go through the data, identify information that are significant and connect them to the goals that you already develop. And sometimes you can develop goals and themes based on your conceptual framework or based on a theory or a model that you are using. You can also develop initial goals and themes based on your first interview transcript, right? And then you use that information or the goals that you have to go through the data. As you can see here, imagine that you have been asked to analyze a document or you are analyzing a transcript using content analysis. What are you going to do? The first thing that you have to think about is what is the framework that you have? Do you have a conceptual framework or theoretical framework? Then based on the framework, you can come up with codes and theme. We call it code frame. As you can see here, I have a syllabus. I just want to conduct content analysis using Think Integrated Instructional Design Model. So the first thing that you have to think about is that you have to learn more about the model that you're going to use. So the reason why I chose this model is that I have developed a syllabus and I just want to find out whether the quality or the properties of the syllabus or the characteristics of the syllabus are consistent with the model that I have, right? So first, I have to learn more about the model. What is the model? Who developed it? What is the model explaining? These are the information that you have to learn before you develop goals and themes. As you can see here, I have an overview of that model, and also the model have three components, and I provided those three components and learn about that. It also has 6 elements. The main explanation of this model is that the course or a training program should have these 6 elements. So you have the knowledge, application, integration, implication, practicality, and also acquisition. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to see whether the course that I've developed has all these elements in that. Always you have to understand the model or the theory that you are using and also look at the elements. What are the concepts that are connected to this theory or the model? And also know the explanation of all these concepts, because that will help you to develop goals and theme, which will be called code frame. So as you can see here, based on that information, I was able to develop a code frame. Code frame is a list of codes, categories, or themes that are consistent with the characteristics of the model that you are using, and also that will help you to identify significant information from the data and connect them to those codes and themes. As you can see, when I scroll down here, I have my table. So these are the 6 elements. I have generated themes based on the 6 elements and also generated codes under that. The codes are like a descriptive breakdown of the themes. So as you can see, I've listed codes that are under each of the components. I came up with the theme because of my understanding of the component, and I also came up with the codes based on the information that I'm looking for from the data and that are consistent with the components. So when I'm going through the data, as you can see here, I want to see whether the course has a fundamental knowledge related to learning outcomes. Does the course have introductory materials and resources? So that's what I'm going to look for under no content. I translated the components into a specific objective, right? So as you can see here, student will be able to know content, know course content, apply knowledge, integrate ideas, make inferences. And as you can see, when we go up, it reflects the 6 elements of the model, right? So what can you learn from this? After you have identified a specific framework or model or theory, the next step that you have to think about is what are the elements what are the definitions of the element, what are the characteristics of the element or the components. And based on that, you'll be able to develop themes. Under the themes, you can also list codes there. Codes are descriptive phrases that represent the significant information that you are anticipating to get from the data, at the same time consistent with the theme that you have. You have to be flexible here. When you go to the data, you can also develop codes that you did not list, and you can bring them here. So this is how you can do it. But if you are struggling to come up with themes and codes based on a conceptual framework, you can use Chat GPT to help you to come up with themes and codes that are consistent with the theory that you have or the framework that you are using. If you have GPT Plus, you can use one of my custom GPT that I've created purposely for that. I've put the link of the custom GPT in the description section so that you can get access to it, and you just click on it and then you'll be able to access the custom GPT. This is the one that I'm thinking about. So if you want to generate code frame, you can use Quali Code Frame. That will be the one that I've created for the purpose of helping you to develop codes and themes to help analyze your data. If you don't have GPT Plus, there's an option. You can just go to Chat and then you go to GPT 3.5 so that you'll be able to do the same thing that I'm going to show you, where you can give the system background information or a brief information about the model and the component. Then you can ask the system to suggest codes and themes that you can use to go through your data. You can also give a brief information about the kind of data that you are working on so that the system will give you specific or very good themes that will help you to analyze your qualitative data. If you have GPT Plus, then you can either use my custom GPT or general Chat GPT to do the generation of themes and codes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give the system a brief information about the model that I'm using. So I go to GPT. I'm using my custom GPT. So what you can say is that, can you generate codes and themes based on the following model? And then I paste the model there, but I have to edit it a little bit. So to give the system brief information about the model. So this one is the overview of the model. And then I click on enter. Right. I gave a brief information about the model and also listed the 6 elements. And this is what the system provided. So the system has given me the codes that I can use based on the 6 components. If the codes are not a lot, right, what you can do is that you can tell the system, can you generate about 5 codes under each of the 6 elements. So you want to increase the number of codes so that you can explore every aspect of each of the components. So you click enter and let's see what we get. So you see how the system has provided us a list of codes that we can use. We don't have to directly take all the information, right, word for word and use it in terms of the codes. You can adjust it to be consistent with maybe your research question or the information that you want to extract. So these are all suggestions that you can use. As you can see here, it didn't give us the theme per se, but it gives us a list of codes that you can start with, right? Because when you go through the data, you can first look for information and connect them to the codes. And then after that, you can also think about developing themes. You review and see whether they are consistent with the component, and also they will help you to identify significant information from the data. The next step that you have to focus on is to start the coding process. Normally, I use In Vivo. So what I do is I go to In Vivo, which is a qualitative software that you could use. And then what you have to think about is you give it the project name. So you can say content analysis project, and then you go to next. You want it to auto-save the process and go to create. So as you can see here, we have open in Vivo. I'll upload my transcript, or in my case, I'll upload the syllabus that I'm using. I'm analyzing the syllabus to see whether it has characteristics that are consistent with the model that I'm using, right? In your case, you can also think about interview transcript and just, if you have the transcript, you just go to import files and look for the information and you can upload. So this one for I'm just focusing on one document, and then you click on import so that you can bring that information there. I've brought the syllabus here, and I can double click to open. As you can see here, this is the syllabus with the course description and learning objective, and also we have the table here. So this is the document I'm going to analyze using the code frame that I've created. The next step is to go to codes, and then this is where you create containers that are going to drop significant information into that, right? So as you can see, I already developed my code frame. So I'm going to create containers for the themes or the main component, and under that, I will create containers for the code. As you can see here, I right-click here, go to node, and then I'll just copy my first component, check here, click on OK. If I want to bring the code under this component or element, I right-click on that and then new code, and then I go and copy the code. So what I'm doing right now is I'm creating containers for each of the components and also the codes under them. So let me pull this one here so that you can see. Let me even close this one so that you can see. So I'm bringing the next one. I copy, bring that information here. Okay, so that's how you're going to do. You just create containers for each of the codes and potential themes. So you're going to do the same thing for all the components. So the second one, you're going to click outside because you are creating a component or a theme. So you bring that, you copy that, put that here, aggregate coding from children, and then you click that. So that's what you're gonna do. I'll bring in another code and bring in under this one, right click new. So that's how you're gonna do. Let me show you the final product, how it looks like. If you know how to do thematic analysis, content analysis will be very easy for you. Thematic analysis, you go through the data and identify significant information and develop themes. But content analysis is like, let me develop the codes and themes first before I go through the data. And that's what we are doing. So as you can see here, when I click on the plus sign, I have all the codes. If you are dealing with more than one theory and you want to bring those components, then it makes sense to label the theory or the model or bring the model name so that it will be different from the other one. But if you have one, you don't have to bring the model name. You can start bringing the codes and themes. But in case you want to bring the model name here, let me show you how to. Let me copy it from here. You can right-click here and click on new code and bring the model name and aggregate. So you see that this one is outside. What you're going to do here is you just drag and drop. So let me drag and drop this one. And I'm dragging the themes. And now I have the framework here. And at that, we have the themes or the elements and also the codes, right? So that's how we create containers for the codes and themes that you have developed. So the next step is to start the coding process. If you know how to use In Vivo, you'll be able to do the coding process. And I have videos on how to code your data. So the same process, you click on File, you click on that, and then you double click on the document that you want to review or analyze and go to code so that you bring all the containers, and then you can go to the data and identify if you think that this information is significant. You select that and then you drag and drop it into the respective container. So that's how you're going to do drag. You select, drag and drop. It's so easy, right? Sometimes you may identify some things that have nothing to do with the existing codes. This is where you create a new container, right? And then house it. So let's say there's something here that is so important, it might be part of the characteristics of a course, but it's not part of the components, right? It's not part of the codes that you have developed, but it's connected to one of the components. You can right click on that component and then you indicate the label for the code. So we can say maybe practical learning activities, if that's the code that you want to use. And then you click on aggregate coding from children, and then you can now drop that into that container, right? So you have to be flexible. Not all of the significant information can be matched with the code that you have. So if you encounter a situation where you have identified something that's significant, but you don't have existing code, you can create a new code under a specific component. Sometimes it may be outside a component too, right? You can put it outside and then you can come back and reflect and see what you have to do about it, either to bring it under a specific component or create a new component in addition to the existing components that you have or elements that you have. So that's how we can do the analysis. Let me show you how the final product looks like. Let's go to codes. You click on the plus sign, you have all the themes and the codes. You can see places that are 0. This means that you didn't identify any information there from the data that are connected to this code, right? If you want to see what is in a specific container, you can double click, right? Right. Another thing is that when you are coding and you finish, maybe you have more than one file and you finish coding the first file, you can go to files and then double click on the second file. And then you can go to code again and bring the containers here so that you can go through and drop it into the specific code. Now, what can we learn from this? We can see that based on the course I created, there wasn't any information that focuses on engaging in real life activities, right? So you can see how the code frame or the list of codes will help you to see what is missing and what is also not missing, right? It can also help you to see whether you have to adjust the conceptual framework that you have because maybe it's not consistent with the data, or you got some new information that can be added to the conceptual framework to make a little adjustment to it, right? So this one is going to be very helpful in terms of what is missing concerning the data that you have. So you can say that making is missing. We didn't find anything in the data that talks about that. Imagine that you have more than one file or you have a group of participant transcripts, right? You can go to explore and metrics to be able to see who are connected to a specific course or theme. So you can click here and select, and then you select the files. I have only one file here. You go to this plus sign and then click on select, go to codes, the plus sign, and select the themes that you are interested in or the codes that are interested in and click on OK. And then you can click on run query. If you have a lot of files, you have a list of files will be here. I have only one file. But just looking at this one file, it will show you the characteristics of the file based on the themes or the framework that you have. So you can see here that make inference is 0. So this means that there's nothing that was extracted from this data and connected to this theme. So any place that is 0 means that there's nothing in that container. But you can see that I have 23 here. It means that 23 significant information were extracted and put under this team. And if you want to know the list of the 23, you can double click and get information about that, right? So a list of all the codes will be showing here so that you'll be able to see. And in case you want to go to the specific document to see the context or where in the document was this information located, you can click on this link, right? and it will take you to the source, the document. You can use the code metrics to do that. You can compare files and compare codes. If you look at one of my presentations that talks about visualizing your data, you can also learn how to compare files and codes. So this is what I have for you. Another last thing that I want to show to you is that what if you have a lot of codes under each of the components? You can decide to sort them or group them. You can apply the sorting strategy where you examine each of the codes and see whether there is a connection between them and bring them together. Because qualitative analysis is all about data reduction. You want to reduce the data. So if you have a lot of codes and you don't consider the components as themes, you can think about developing themes by clustering or grouping the codes under each of the components, and so that at the end of the day, you'll be able to get themes that are addressing the research question. In this case, I don't have to categorize the codes here because I see these as themes, right? And then you also have to think about, are these themes addressing your research questions? I think I did a video on ways of making sure that your conceptual framework are addressing your research question that you have. But this one is focusing on just content analysis, developing a code frame, going through your data, identify significant information and connect to the themes or the codes that you have. I hope this one was helpful for you. If you want more information, you can contact me through info@drphilipedu.com or info@centerforresearchmethods.com. If you have any questions, put in the comment section. I'll be happy to address them for you. Thank you.